It is the autumn of 1942. The Texas Panhandle stretches flat and featureless to the horizon in every direction, the kind of landscape that swallows secrets whole. Dust devils spiral across the Ochre Plain outside Amarillo, and the nearest town is small enough that nobody asks too many questions. That is precisely why the United States government chose this place. Within months of that quiet autumn, thousands of workers would pour into this desolate corner of North Texas, hauling steel, pouring concrete, and erecting an industrial complex so vast it would eventually sprawl across 16,000 acres of American soil. They were told they were supporting the war effort. Most of them had no idea they were building what would one day become the most dangerous address in the United States. What if there was a place so secret that the government buried its true purpose beneath patriotic language and wartime necessity for decades? What if the workers who built it, operated it, and spent their entire careers inside it went home each night without fully grasping the magnitude of what hummed and pulsed behind those fortified walls? This is not speculation. This is the documented and until very recently heavily classified history of the Pantex plant, the facility outside Amarillo, Texas, that has assembled every single nuclear weapon in the American arsenal since 1975. And in early 2026, a tranche of newly declassified Department of Energy records has finally begun to illuminate just how much of that history was deliberately kept from the American public. The moment to understand it fully is right now. The story does not begin with nuclear weapons. It begins with conventional destruction on a scale that still stuns historians. In the months following Pearl Harbor, the United States War Department embarked on one of the most extraordinary industrial mobilizations in human history, and Texas became a cornerstone of that effort. The Texas Ordnance Plant, as it was originally designated, broke ground in the spring of 1942 with a budget that would today represent billions of dollars in today's money. Its mission was straightforward and brutal: manufacture bombs, artillery shells, and high-explosive ordnance fast enough to keep pace with a two-ocean war. To accomplish that mission, the government built a city where there had been nothing but grassland. Dormitories, cafeterias, churches, and medical facilities materialized from the dust alongside the production lines. At its wartime peak, the facility employed over 10,000 workers, many of them women who had never set foot in a factory before the war forced the country to reinvent itself. They worked rotating shifts around the clock, filling metal casings with TNT, pressing explosive compounds into precisely calibrated shapes, and loading artillery rounds that would sail across the Pacific and across the Atlantic to detonate on soil most of these workers would never see. The scale was genuinely staggering. By 1945, the Texas Ordnance Plant had produced so much ordnance that the logistics of moving it all taxed the national rail network. But what the government understood, even as this infrastructure was being built, was that the war they were fighting was about to change in a way that would make conventional bombs seem almost quaint. The Manhattan Project was advancing in laboratories across the country, and the people managing that program were already thinking about what came after the first weapon was deployed. They needed infrastructure. They needed the kind of remote, expansive, already secured industrial landscape that could handle materials so dangerous that the public could never be allowed to know the full extent of what was being handled there. They had already built exactly that infrastructure in the Texas Panhandle. When the war ended and the atomic age began, the choice of what to do with Pantex was not a difficult one. The Texas Ordnance Plant was officially decommissioned in 1945, its wartime mission complete. For a few years it sat largely idle, its enormous buildings empty and echoing, swept by panhandle winds that nobody was there to hear. To anyone driving past on the flat highway that bisects that part of Texas, it looked like nothing more than a collection of aging industrial structures slowly returning to the earth. That appearance was, from the very beginning, entirely deliberate. In 1951, with the Korean War escalating and the Cold War hardening into something that looked increasingly permanent, the government reactivated the site. This time, the cover story was thinner, and the reality was considerably more alarming. Pantex was leased to Procter & Gamble, yes, the consumer goods company, as a superficial layer of bureaucratic camouflage, a detail that reads today as almost surreal. Beneath that corporate veneer, the Atomic Energy Commission was quietly converting the facility for a new and unprecedented purpose: the assembly of nuclear weapons. Construction began in earnest and in extraordinary secrecy. New buildings were added that bore no resemblance to anything used in conventional manufacturing. The so-called gravel girdies, low-profile, earth-bermed structures with roofs designed to collapse inward in the event of an accidental detonation, containing the blast rather than allowing it to scatter radioactive material across the surrounding countryside, began appearing across the complex. From the air, they looked like rounded hills, lumps of displaced earth that blended into the flat Texas landscape with an almost architectural cunning. From the inside, they were something else entirely: precision environments where the most destructive objects ever created by human civilization were carefully, methodically pieced together. But there was a problem. The workers streaming through the gates each morning knew they were handling something significant. They signed documents. They underwent background checks of a thoroughness that must have seemed extraordinary to people who had simply answered a job advertisement in the Amarillo newspaper. They were given clearances without being fully told what those clearances meant, and they were instructed, in language that brooked no ambiguity, that what happened inside those burned buildings was never to be discussed outside them. Families learned quickly not to ask. Children grew up understanding that their parents' workplace was a topic that existed in a permanent and unbreachable silence. Life inside the facility was governed by a culture of compartmentalization so extreme that workers on adjacent production lines might have no knowledge of what their colleagues were assembling 10 meters away. The newly declassified 2026 records describe an internal management philosophy that one senior Atomic Energy Commission administrator characterized in a 1967 memo as structural amnesia, the deliberate engineering of ignorance as a security measure. Workers knew their task. They knew their building. They knew almost nothing else. Former employees who have spoken to researchers in recent years describe a workplace that felt simultaneously mundane and deeply strange. The cafeteria served good food, the parking lot filled and emptied on a regular schedule, supervisors talked about baseball and the weather. And somewhere nearby, behind reinforced doors and beneath tons of carefully engineered earth, the most powerful weapons in human history were being assembled with the same methodical precision applied to any other industrial product. What they discovered next was even more disturbing than the secrecy itself. As the Cold War deepened and the American nuclear arsenal expanded, Pantex did not simply grow. It became the singular, irreplaceable node in an entire national weapons infrastructure. Other facilities around the country handled components. The uranium machining happened elsewhere. The tritium was produced at a separate site in South Carolina. The precision electronics were manufactured in facilities scattered across multiple states. But the final assembly, the moment when all of those components came together into a functional nuclear weapon, happened at Pantex, and only at Pantex. When the Department of Energy formally consolidated all American nuclear weapons assembly at the Texas facility in 1975, it created something unprecedented: a single building, or rather a complex of buildings, upon which the entirety of America's nuclear deterrent depended. Records tell a different story than the reassuring public statements of the era. Internal assessments conducted throughout the 1970s and 1980s repeatedly flagged concerns about the concentration of risk at a single facility. A 1979 internal review, only partially declassified in the 2026 document release, noted that a sufficiently catastrophic event at Pantex, whether accidental or otherwise, would, quote, degrade the nation's weapons production capability to a degree from which recovery would require years, not months. The language is bureaucratic, but the implication is chilling. The United States, for decades, kept all of its nuclear eggs in one very carefully guarded basket, and the people at the highest levels of government understood exactly how precarious that arrangement was. The cover-up, if that word even adequately describes what happened, operated on multiple levels simultaneously. At the local level, it was a matter of polite, almost neighborly silence. Amarillo knew what was nearby. The city had grown up in the shadow of Pantex, and its residents had developed a particular kind of pragmatic acceptance that expressed itself in the absence of conversation rather than in any active deception. At the national level, the secrecy was enforced with the full weight of federal law, classification systems, and the ever-present threat of prosecution under the Atomic Energy Act. And at the international level, the existence of the facility was an open secret that Washington treated as classified, known to adversaries through satellite imagery and intelligence gathering, but officially unacknowledged in any public document for decades. The human cost of this secrecy is only now beginning to be fully counted. Workers who spent careers at Pantex were exposed to a range of hazardous materials: beryllium, tritium, high explosives, and various chemical compounds used in weapons assembly. And the health consequences have been severe and extensively documented. Former employees and their advocates have spent years fighting through administrative processes to receive compensation under the Energy Employees Occupational Illness Compensation Program. The 2026 document release has added new weight to those claims, revealing that internal health and safety assessments conducted as early as the 1960s identified exposure risks that were subsequently buried in classified appendices rather than communicated to the workers themselves. The post-war history of Pantex, and here, post-war means the period after the Cold War ended in 1991, is perhaps the most unexpected chapter of all. When the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union began its dissolution, the logic that had sustained Pantex for 4 decades seemed suddenly, almost disoriently, obsolete. The plant had been built to assemble weapons, now with arms reduction treaties reshaping the strategic landscape. It was given an additional mission that its founders could not possibly have anticipated: disassembly. Pantex became the graveyard of American nuclear weapons as well as their birthplace. Warheads that had sat in silos across the continental United States and aboard submarines patrolling the world's oceans were transported to the Texas Panhandle and carefully, methodically taken apart in the same gravel gerties where similar devices had been assembled decades before. At its peak in the 1990s, the facility was dismantling nuclear weapons at a rate that few people outside the program knew was even possible. The sheer physical quantity of dismantled weapons waiting for processing created a storage situation that government watchdogs described in unclassified reports as logistically challenging, a phrase that, in the context of thousands of disassembled nuclear warheads, qualifies as one of the more significant understatements in the history of American governance. And yet the strangest thing about Pantex in the modern era is not its history, it is its continued, largely unremarked presence. The facility is still operational. It still employs several thousand workers. It still assembles, maintains, and, when necessary, disassembles nuclear weapons. It sits right now 16,000 acres of fenced and patrolled federal land in the flat Texas Panhandle, visible from the highway if you know what you're looking at, served by a community that has lived alongside it for more than 80 years. Occasionally, local residents report unusual aircraft activity in the area. Heavy transport helicopters moving between the facility and nearby airfields, their cargo manifests classified and their routes unmarked on any public chart. Security perimeters shift, new berms appear, the flatland keeps its counsel. In 2024, a group of academic researchers attempting to document the environmental footprint of American weapons facilities filed a Freedom of Information request for soil and groundwater assessment data from the Pantex site. The response they received, partially redacted, partially deferred, partially denied on national security grounds, contained a single unreacted line that researchers found difficult to interpret in any reassuring way. It read simply, "Current characterization is ongoing." The legacy of the Pantex plant is inseparable from the larger story of what America was willing to do and willing to hide in the name of security during the most dangerous century in human history. Thousands of workers spent their careers inside those bermed buildings, assembling objects that could end cities, and went home each evening to families who asked no questions because they understood instinctively that no answers would be given. The weapons those workers built shaped the entire architecture of global power for the second half of the 20th century. The decisions made in classified memos about what those workers were told and what they were not told shaped their lives and the lives of their families in ways that are still being reckoned with. The 2026 document release has given historians, journalists, and the families of former workers a new window into a story that was never supposed to be fully visible. But it is only a window. The documents released represent a fraction of the total classified archive relating to Pantex and the American nuclear weapons program. Requests for further declassification are pending. Some will be granted, many will not. There is something genuinely unnerving about standing on that flat Texas highway and looking across the plain at those low, rounded structures half hidden by the earth. They look like nothing. They look like geography. They look like a landscape that has nothing to say for itself. And perhaps that is the most unsettling thought of all to take away from this story. Every facility we know about, every Pantex, every classified installation that has eventually surfaced in a document release or a congressional hearing became visible only because someone, somewhere, decided it was safe to let us see it. We only know about the ones they admitted. What about the ones still hidden?